This week we are looking at the Old Testament book of Nahum. Yesterday we introduced the book and I talked a little bit about Marcion, sort of framed things up. Today I want to talk about the background of the book. So, who was Nahum? What was this book? Why was this book written? The context of its setting. So, Nahum was an Elkoshite. And he is a man about whom we know nothing except that he was from Elkosh. And since we have never found a map that tells us where Elkosh is, we don't actually know a whole lot about him. So he's a prophet of God, and he is called to speak against one of the most powerful and merciless empires in history, that is the Assyrians. So the story is basically your classic good guy versus bad guy genre. The good guys are the Jews living in Judah. The bad guys are the Assyrians. And they're the bullies of the ancient Near East. And they are fierce and merciless. They're an unstoppable military power. So stories about their conquest often talk about the way they would lay siege to a city. So if you're in Israel, if you're in Egypt, if you go back to these areas and you're looking at these archaeological ruins, you see that every city has a wall around it, and basically you lived often outside of the wall, but at night you always went back inside the wall and you locked the gate. And so when a marauding empire like the Assyrians would come to lay siege to you, what they would do is they would basically just bring enough people to surround the city. I mean, they're not that big. They'd surround the city and they would just wait. I mean, it could be years, but they would wait to starve you out. Like you needed, eventually you needed to leave the city gates because you had run out of all the food that you had stored. You're starving to death, and you open the gates and then everybody dies. So one of the things that the Assyrians would do as they were laying siege is they would build a pyramid that went over the wall of the skulls of their previous conquest. So there's some psychological terror going on here. The Assyrians are bad guys. And this is going to take place in the 7th century BC. The Egyptian city of Thebes has fallen. Nineveh has fallen. And the Jews from Judah, because remember the kingdom divides north and south. The northern 10 tribes are called Israel. Southern 2 tribes are called Judah, but they're also Jews, and they still have the capital. So there's been about 100 years after the Assyrians have already ransacked and completely wiped out the 10 northern tribes. For the next 100 years, the Assyrians have been demanding payment from the Jews living in Judah. And so they've been making these monthly payments, just basically they're being blackmailed. And the Assyrians say, Hezekiah is the king of Judah, and he at this point has been making these payments every month, or the Assyrians say, we're going to come and we're going to destroy you. We're going to kick your teeth in. Like, we will do to you what we did to the northern 10 tribes. So as the book opens up, Hezekiah, the king of Judah, gathers a coalition of some other city-states, some other lesser vassals living in the area, and he says, let's tell Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, take a long hike off a short pier, like we're done making these payments. So they send this note to Sennacherib and say, we're not gonna keep paying this payment. So Sennacherib gets an army and he starts marching towards them. And by the time Nahum comes onto the scene, Sennacherib is basically surrounded Judah. All the other states have said, uncle. They've said, no, we're with you, Sennacherib. You're wonderful. We're going to pay you always and forever. And in fact, Hezekiah has said, just kidding, here's the payment. But Sennacherib is looking to make an example of Hezekiah and the Jews in Judah and to wipe them out. So it's at this point that Nahum, a prophet, writes the book of Nahum. And basically, it's what some would call a warrior hymn. He imagines it's as if he's sort of writing prophetically about how, you see some of this in chapters 2 and 3, how God, if the Jews are faithful to God, God is going to wipe out the Assyrians. And it's sort of a victory kind of song is what Nahum writes about how God is faithful, he's going to destroy the Assyrians. And so that sets the context. That's the backdrop out of which we get these prophetic words from Nahum about God being angry, God being just, God going to overthrow the vile Assyrians and punish them. And so there's a lot of different ways that we could go with this book. I want to focus on the problem that, enlightened 21st century, well-educated, loving civil members of society have, and that's this idea that God can be good and angry, and that he can exercise his jealousy, his wrath, and his vengeance on the Assyrians. More on that tomorrow. Have a good day.